would like to call to order the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular Township Board meeting for Tuesday, November 26, 2024 at 7 p.m. to order. Could we all stand, face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, roll call. We'd like to welcome Trustee Hornberger. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Hornberger. Here. Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Can we make an amendment to the agenda? Item 5B will not occur tonight, correct?
Correct.
So with the approval of agenda with the removal of item 5B, is there a motion?
So moved.
Clerk Berry with support of Supervisor Kersten. Presentations. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 5A, presentations. There is a presentation tonight. Clerk Berry.
Item A is postponed from our November 12th, 2024 regular Township Board meeting, and that is the presentation of Anchor Bay Rotary's donation for Connie Bowles Park.
I'd like to invite the Rotary to the podium.
Hi, on behalf of Anchor Bay Rotary, we are going to present a check for $6,000 for benches at Connie Bowles Park.
And could we get a photo of the entire board
We
receiving
can,
the check?
Yes.
So, go up there.
I just saw your text.
Couple more presentations. Go ahead.
So I'd just like to thank the Rotary Club for their donation and just highlight a couple community investments they've made over the last couple of years. We just have a couple slides with a couple photos to kind of run through. Karen, if you don't mind. Oh, sorry. So over the last couple of years, in May 2020, they invested $4,800 in the Salt River Nature Preserve, the education storyboards that you see when you're out there. The next donation, Karen, could you turn that for me? I'm sorry. Was in May of 2023. They donated $6,000 to the Salt River Nature Center Preserve for the park bench that you see along the river's edge. And then the next donation, one more, Karen, thank you, was in May 2023. They donated $2,872, and they had a whole group of people participate when we planted 25 trees over at Pollard Park. So we just want to thank them again for being such great community partners. We just want to give a quick department head update on some of our bigger projects. This is obviously our police station. This was a photo that was taken and actually shown at the last board meeting. We just want to show the progress from meeting to meeting. So this was at the last meeting, the day of last meeting. This is today. So you can see that the metal paneling is continuing now around the rest of the building on those elevations. This next shot was last board meeting. You can see the front of the building. This is the front corner near the main drive. And the next shot, you can see how the metal panel and the wing wall that we have, well, there'll be a security fence that goes behind there to kind of protect that area. So we're making progress there, although it's taken a little bit of time. On this back end is what I wanted to touch on. So this back end you'll see is the side that faces town center. This is what the finished elevation will look like. What I want to show and highlight, we've been spending a lot of time there, although the progress looks like it's slow, it's actually a lot of stuff happening underground. Where that red arrow is, you can actually see in this photo, there's an old telephone pole and a heck of a lot of old wires and connections that we're trying to modernize and put everything underground. So you'll see the telephone pole to your right and the arrow showing where it's at to the one side. So now this photo will just show you really quick how we're modernizing that. Everything that you see in red will be removed. Telephone pole, the old CT cabinet, all the other connections. The areas that you see in green are the new conduits and wires that will come up from underground. And to the left, you can see the lower corner, we're actually gonna put a pad-mounted transformer. So that's some of the work that's going on now, and we plan on wrapping that up over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll get back to putting on siding on that part of the building. Taking us over to the municipal office, this was a picture that was shown at the last meeting. We were doing some EFIS work to the front canopy. Nothing fancy, just a complete recoat. You can see now that's all done, so we apologize when you come in the building, it's a little dark. We got some new light fixtures that'll be going in the next week or so to kind of finish that up. But that'll be all done, and the front signage will be added as well. Taking you to the inside, we're excited to note that some of our teams have started moving into their newly remodeled workspace. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be moving the rest of our staff in. This area you can see is the new assessing department looking towards the front counter. So we're excited about the space. We're looking forward to everybody getting in and getting comfortable in that area. That'll happen over the next couple weeks going into the holidays. Lastly, at the last board meeting, we mentioned about cutting trees out front. We got that done today. TC, one of our vendors, came out, and there was a bunch of dead trees along our historic village and the river that runs along our property. So you can see we got those cleaned up today. We'll be coming back out over the next couple days doing some stump grinding and some additional cleaning. At Brandenburg Park, the board had agreed to install a new toll booth. So we were super excited about that. The last part of that project was installing the mini split, which you can see that little white box. So that'll allow us to heat and cool throughout the seasons as we extend our park hours. So that project is complete and done under budget. We wanted to mention this because we've been getting a lot of calls on this. We want to make it clear that we are in no means tearing apart this playscape or removing this playscape. We got a lot of call from the residents asking why we were pulling this playscape out. We are not. We are just removing the rubber surface, and then we plan to install new. So our guys are out there. We have all the rubber surface removed. Over the next couple weeks, we'll be digging out some of the subsurface and then starting to install new material. That probably won't be finished till spring, till we wait to put fresh material in so it doesn't have to sit through the winter. Oops. Lastly, our pier project is complete. We came in under budget with that as well, but we just want to let everybody know, in doing so, we realized that that pier has 3 sets of different voltage, 480 volt, 270, and 120, which is a pretty high power going out to that pier. So we are in the process. We have some lighting contractors out. We've been out there a couple of nights, so if you notice the pier lights going on and off, we're just taking different low volt, 12 volt lights and trying to recreate the lighting pattern that we have out there. So we'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks. We'll bring it back to board, but it's something we're looking at. We got a series of those lights. Those older fixtures are so expensive, we think we can do it a lot cheaper and for a lot lower power that we don't have to sling 480 volt power across our pier. So that's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other department reports?
Thank you. Just wanted to give a quick update. At the last meeting, I informed the board about the upcoming Planning Commission agenda. I had the Starbucks on 23 Mile Road, the Maverick at Town Center, and a single-family development on the north side of 24 Mile Road. Those projects were approved. Would guess they'd probably be looking at construction in the spring after they submit for engineering, design, and approval. But that's all I had. Just wanted to give a quick update on that one.
Any further department reports? Treasurer Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The winter tax bills will be in the mailboxes here Friday and Saturday, and you can begin to pay for the winter taxes on Monday at 8 a.m. We will still, the Treasury Department will still be located at the far end of the hallway for a few more days, just to make sure that everything is operational at this end back for the new location. And then the SUMCOG, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, recently had a General Assembly, and some of the takeaways from that that we learned, we had a slide presentation and some information. We learned about a service that's available to the township called the Location Analysis and Visitation Impact Tool. This would provide data through SEMCOG where they could tell us like how many people were at a park at a certain day. So if we had an event, or if we wanted to see how many people are using the park, say over the summer, say Brandenburg Park over the summer, we can see where those people are coming from, whether they're local Chesterfield residents or they're coming from out of the area through that location tool. If we have a specific event, say like the Bassmaster event or our Cheers to Chesterfield event, that tool would be available to be able to tell us that kind of data. And they use it, that data is through the cell phone service. So as uncomfortable as that may make you feel sometimes, the reality is that your cell phone sends these little pins that they track, and they're able to see. The other thing that some of the other presentations that we learned had involved, like, say, when people are moving in and out of Michigan, and we're seeing some movement, but it's interesting depending on the demographics and who's moving in Michigan and who's moving out of Michigan. So some of the things is where are they going? And we're seeing some lateral movement from other Midwestern states, and that is job-related movement. And with that, what they also shared with us is inflation-adjusted real income grew by 2.8% in our region, and that data is from 2018 through 2022. And they say that significant gaps remain in Southeast Michigan's economic prosperity, and education drives that income growth. And so those are the types of data that are available through Southeast Michigan Council of Government, and just wanted to kind of update the board on that. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just two quick updates. Library board met on November 20th. Not a whole lot going on there new. They did have great turnout for their 30th anniversary celebrations, and the reading event went exceptionally well. I did advise the board that, based on some preliminary discussions, that I don't see a board liaison continuing with the library board. It is one of the only liaison assignments that really just has us there, as I feel, and I mentioned this to them, almost as a scribe. I'm not participatory in any of the agenda items. I really am there just bringing information from the board and then from their board back to our board. Not that it's a waste of time, it's just that there's a more efficient way to do that. I think, Mr. Supervisor, I think the new director has done a great job of, I think, strengthening relationships with us, and particularly you. They have great communications back and forth, so perhaps that's something that we do away with during committee assignments, in the next month or so. The other committee report is the Senior Advisory Board, which I do think was kind of put together as a result of all of the challenges that we faced with relocating the senior center over to the community center, and now we've been able to really solve a lot of problems that were, I think, being unfortunately exacerbated just with more communication, I guess. So meeting monthly, and the big issue that we've had, you know, kind of reoccurring is for those of you that have been involved with the senior center, you may remember various bake sales and things over the past several years with money going into a fund originally designed for a community center, a big senior dedicated only community center, if you will. The fund balance had around $60,000, but nobody could quite figure out where the money went and how the money was. Our finance director, Vicki Bauer, came over to one of our senior advisory committee meetings and gave a complete breakdown of really every penny of that fund, which sits at roughly $61,000. That money is earmarked for senior driven expenditures. And so the question became what to do with it. The list of things was long, and just great job by our Parks and Rec director, Ms. Vanderson, who sort of listened to all of the feedback from the various meetings and then started to try to put dollar amounts attached to that. So there were everything from a water refill station to some ceiling fans, new tables, padded chairs, headsets and microphones for the instructors. And what we decided at our last meeting, or what they decided at the last meeting, is they would like to use the monies for something that all of the current seniors can enjoy. The bus trips are wildly popular, and so rather than purchasing concrete items that would come out of the township budget for things like chairs and HVAC or things like that, they're going to look at increasing their bus trips and perhaps adding additional special events, which are, if you're a senior and you've ever gone over to the most recent one, I think, was our Oktoberfest. The staff there are just really, they give their all, and they're very, very well attended. So we're looking at increasing in 2025 the bus trips and perhaps the special events, but that's an ongoing assessment. And the other issue that was discussed at length was the utilization of our SMART resources. I think Supervisor has gotten very involved with SMART, not only for trying to get all of the monies that Chesterfield taxpayers put into SMART returned to Chesterfield. And I think, without getting too deep, it looks like Chesterfield is kind of one of those donor communities. We're putting far more in than we're getting out, and trying to pin them down for some increased SMART services for our seniors is a full-time job. So appreciate the update and the work on that committee, and I hope that is a committee that we make a formal committee coming up in 2025. I know that the seniors really do appreciate it, and we're able to solve a lot of problems. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As you know, we had a very successful November election. I have to say, in all of my years, it's probably one of the smoothest elections that we've ever run, considering everything that we had to deal with this year. I'm very, very proud of that. I think part of the reason why things went so well, and I appreciate all of you who contacted our office, contacted me to give us that feedback. We very much appreciate that. We worked very hard over the last 14 months to ensure that we had as seamless an operation as we could possibly have, and that all of our voters were serviced quickly, and that results were in as soon as we could get them in. All of our results were into the county before midnight, which is unusual for those of you who have watched elections for a long time. In some of our other neighboring states even, it's taking days and days and hours to count ballots. That did not occur here. We had a very good operation that was run, and I want to thank everyone on my staff, all of our temporary employees, as well as our permanent staff members who really went the extra mile to make sure that our residents were well served. Some of the results from that election, we had, of our 37,108 active registered voters, there were 29,283 ballots cast, which is approximately 80%. That is a record for Chesterfield Township for the number of ballots cast. Of our those who cast ballots, 12,194, there were 12,194 absentee ballots issued. There were 11,722 ballots returned, which is approximately a 96% return rate on absentee ballots. That amounted to 32% of those who voted in that election, voted by absentee ballot. Early voting ballots cast, 8,139 voters came through early voting over the 9 days, and that amounted to 22% of the voter turnout. And then on election day, ballots cast 9,422, which represents 26% of our registered voters. So it was much what we expected. Not a lot of other clerks expected that. We had a debriefing at the county yesterday, and there were clerks that were unprepared for the early voting. We were not. We were very well prepared. We expected about a third to vote early. We didn't quite get to that threshold, but we came very, very close to that number. And on a go-forward basis, I really do encourage as many people as possible to vote early. We do expect in the future we will have approximately 1/3 vote early, 1/3 will vote by absentee, and 1/3 will vote on election day. As you can tell from those numbers, of the people who voted in person, about half came early and about half came on election day. So here in Chesterfield, we still have the majority of our voters voting by absentee ballot, voting by mail. And I think that's just reflective of probably our demographics and some of our age groups and folks that have just been very much used to voting absentee, and they have not changed the way that they vote. When the canvass was completed, as you may have heard in the news, St. Clair Shores and Roseville and Warren both had to recirculate absentee ballots, and so that delayed the canvassing operation for everyone. However, the canvassers did finish last Tuesday, and I'm very proud to share with all of you, this is kind of the gold seal, the good housekeeping seal of approval. There's not a lot of communities that get this. This is our second one this year, and that is no out-of-balance precincts. We had 100% of our precincts balanced. That's not very common, and I'm very proud of this. Again, the work that our election inspectors did, particularly our absentee counting board, as well as everyone who was involved in processing that election, that's the result of it, and I'm very proud to present that to you tonight. Thank you.
Just from the supervisor, Josh and they've covered everything, the renovations. Just some comments. In 2025, we're going to begin to review all of our long-term contracts with vendors. I'm very interested in board members' comments as to how we proceed with that, reconstitute the QBS team as was done in the past, but put that on the radar as a group project after January. There was a comment made, some comments made about a month ago at a board meeting about the sale discussion of excess township property. And what I did was I asked assessing to take a look and create a GIS file of all of the township properties. And if you look at the presentation on that's the yellow highlights all of the township properties. A little over 550 acres. That the township owns. Some of these pieces are problematic because they are, and Carrie, correct me if I use the wrong term, they're deed restricted. They came into possession of the township by some means of either purchase or acquisition where they may not be able to be developed. I think out of some of those properties, though, there is space to list and offload some of this excess property. Again, just FYI tonight, the map is here. I'm open to discussing any of these parcels. Again, we've got a history of every single one of them and what they mean. Again, comments or input after this. I'd love to bring back an agenda item to the board seeking, and I tried this 3 years ago and it didn't go very well, but seeking a realtor, commercial realtor to come in and take a look at these parcels and see if they can help guide us listing them or marketing them in some capacity or fashion. So look for that in the future agenda items. And again, this file is available in our GIS. It's available from assessing. If you have any questions on it, obviously you look at them. Some of them are current park properties, so those would be removed. Trustee Joseph, to your comments, yes, we're already moving down that road. Yes, your input on that was appreciated. Your comments, and no reason to me to restate it. I think there's a better value with formalizing the senior advisory committee. That's a great group. A lot of value there. And what I would say too is the SMART discussions. I appreciate SMART and everything they do. I would not want to be the CEO or the manager of that group, but it's deep and it's convoluted, and as I described earlier, it's an onion layer that we have to keep peeling back. But to that point, and I got to thank Karen for doing this. Karen Garby's very involved in this. The expectations that we're going to get back from SMART are not just credits anymore. We are demanding that they provide a service to the residents, and I think we can get there. It may take a little bit longer than expected. So with that being said, I'll close the comments. I will move to item 7, public comments on agenda items only. 3 minutes, time limit. If you would, please state your name for the record, just so we can keep track. It is not required. The mic is open. The mic is open. Seeing no comments, I will move to item 8, the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 12th, 2024. B, approval of the payment of bills is submitted by the Finance Department.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Berry, second by Treasurer Elliott. Discussion? Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9, public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled tonight. Item 10, the regular agenda. Item 10A, Clerk Berry.
Item 10A is to approve a recommendation for the Board of Trustees to adopt Resolution Number 2024-34, Deputy Clerk and Deputy Treasurer compensation.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Is there any support? Is there any support?
Support.
Clerk Berry, floor is yours. Trustee Hornberg, question?
Yes, I do.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't sure what your procedures are, but I do have questions about it. I realize that it's statutorily required to have these two positions. I guess my biggest concern is that are there procedures in place for hiring? Are there requirements listed? So job description, job requirements, qualifications. I understand that they're necessary. I guess my issue is if the deputy employees answer only to the treasurer and clerk, and are evaluated only by the treasurer and clerk, I feel we need to have parameters in place to protect our elected official, the deputy employee, and the townships of our resident from any liability that could take place. When we're creating a position like this, there were just lots of questions that I had, and I know I knew, so I don't know if these things were already taken care of. If they were, please interrupt me. But if the positions are beholden to only the elected official, unless as a board we set clear parameters, I think we're opening ourselves up to some unnecessary liabilities. And we've seen that in our township before, or we've had issues in our township before. I guess in order for me to support a compensation package for these two positions, I need to see clearly what the positions are. What's the job description? How are they being hired? What are the qualifications of the applicant, especially at the level that you're bringing someone in? What are the parameters for the position? Hours, duties, responsibilities? Is there prior experience, education required, compensation, benefits? And then I was questioning, how we came up with 80% of the elected officials' compensation. The Chesterfield data wasn't listed in the information for comparison. And also, are these positions, I believe they were part of a union contract prior? They were not?
No.
Okay. I just want to make sure they're not still in there and we're creating some other, which is going to create, again, another liability. So I guess before I can support this, I need to see clear job descriptions and what the responsibilities are, what the exact compensation is, and most importantly, how is the person going to be evaluated? So that those things are taken care of, which is going to take the liability off of our residents and off of our board, or at least give us some measure of confidence that, that liability is taken care of.
Understood.
So-
Clerk Barry, go
Yeah, the
ahead.
good news is I can answer all of that.
Yay.
So a couple of things. The reason why you don't see Chesterfield Township in there is because we don't have one. We don't have, our compensation for the deputies is merely a $3,000 stipend in the event that an existing township employee would be willing to take on the additional duties. There has never been, this board has never set a salary for a deputy.
So is that an if language? Even if we create this, that language goes away, or?
No, well, yes, because it wouldn't, the $3,000 would no longer exist as a stipend if there's a salary. That would be just a salaried position. It is statutorily required for the board to make that decision. We cannot set the salary for our deputies ourselves. That's a board responsibility per statute. As far as their job descriptions go, it really is dependent upon the elected official, because in different communities, different deputies do different things. It just depends on the structure. It depends on what the elected official needs them to do, because essentially the deputy is the elected official when the elected official is not there. So they have all of the executive authority and power, they have all of the administrative authority and power that the elected official has. They do have to be bonded, just like the treasurer and the clerk have to be bonded. They have to be bonded as well, because they can't perform the duties unless they are bonded. They cannot be us unless they're bonded like us. So in the case of an illness, an absence, any time when the elected official is not present, then if the deputy is there, then the deputy is the one who takes on that role. For example, if there's an extended leave of absence, medical leave, something like that, the deputy would then be responsible for all of the things that the elected official is responsible for, and they have all of their abilities. So just to name a few things, and I actually gave a list to Trustee Vosberg earlier today. They can manage staff, they can set priorities, they can implement policy for the department, they can approve time off. They can do all of the things that the executive would do. There's 3 executives here in the township, obviously myself, Treasurer Elliott, and Supervisor Kersten. So our deputies have all of those executive authorities. The only thing that the deputies cannot do is they cannot vote on the board. They cannot serve in a legislative capacity, but they serve entirely in the same exact capacity that the elected does. when they're not present. So, you know, there, again, it depends on, like, for example, in my case, my deputy, there's much more required, and their duties are much different in an election year than they would be in a non-election year. They're very different. So they might be given special projects to facilitate or to oversee. They would be able to make any kind of decision that we would normally make. If they are there, they can make that decision as well. So they are an executive. They are an administrator and an executive. So they aren't.
So do you have job descriptions for these people?
Yeah, so the statute lays that out, but again, it's variable. So for example, what I would have my deputy do is variable depending on the time of the year that it is, depending on what the needs of the department are. Might be very different from Treasurer Elliott's.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
So,
But when you're posting the position, you need to have a job description for
but there's
them.
no posting to be done because there's no interviewing to be done. The deputy is chosen by the elected official and they serve at their pleasure. So they do not have any job protection, they don't have any arbitration rights, they have no rights whatsoever. They can be hired today and fired tomorrow. They have no, it's fully within, at the pleasure of the elected official.
So are they hired by the township?
They're hired by, they actually work for the elected official, but they're paid by the township, which is why the board has to set the salary.
Okay, so is there an interview process? No, it's just the elected officials deciding.
The elected official decides who their deputy is going to be
So can
and
you
what their
see where I would be
responsibilities are.
concerned about creating liability for the township?
Well,
And I understand statutorily what you're talking
Sure,
about,
yeah.
but we're wading into some waters here that are gonna create liability for
well,
our township.
they do have to be bonded, so they're bonded and insured like we are. So
Mm-hmm.
as far as liability is concerned, we're structured just like every other charter township. We're not doing anything differently. I don't know of any other township that puts any other requirements in place. This is how it's done everywhere. This isn't unique to us. It's a process, as far as like the hiring process is concerned, they just get their paperwork processed by the Human Resources Department. But as far as there's no posting, there's no requirement to interview a set number of people or anything like that, although I know that I've talked to several, because believe me, especially in the clerking world, there's not a lot of people that want to do this anymore. So it's very difficult to find those people, and you want people who you have a relationship with and a level of trust with as well. So I don't know what process Treasurer Elliott used for making her choices. For me, it was a matter of who's available, who's willing to do it, and who do I feel that I have a strong working relationship with that'd be beneficial to the office, and who could do what I do, and who, because these deputies act in our stead. So it has to be someone that you trust to act on your behalf, speak on your behalf, and so on. So it's a very, in that way, a personal decision. But I certainly did speak to several people when I went to choose my deputies through the years. The reality for me right now, and the reason why I brought this today and why it's so important, is that at this time, so my current deputy, what occurred was I had an existing employee for a very long time who was a union employee who was also serving as a deputy. That created an inherent conflict of interest and was very problematic. She decided she did not want to be put in that position anymore, and I understand that. So it put me in a position where I had to find a new deputy. So the only thing that was available was a $3,000 stipend for an existing employee. So I recruited one of my temporary election workers and asked if they would serve as my deputy. They agreed to do it, still being paid as a temporary election worker. That was the only way I had to pay her. I no longer have that option. So now all I would have is a $3,000 stipend for an existing employee that I don't have. So for me, I do not have a mechanism right now to even secure a deputy. But yet I'm required to have one by law, which is why I brought it forward today, because I need to swear in a deputy for the next term, but I don't know who that's going to be, because I needed to know what that person was going to, what was going to be approved by the board before I could even approach someone with that possibility. As of right now, there needs to be another deputy appointed.
So anything in writing about what is required of each position.
No,
I guess that's what bothers
Yeah.
me the most, because when our positions change, when our elected officials change, then the requirements put on these people is going to change.
That's
And
correct.
we're opening ourselves up for liability. I think we open ourselves up for liability when we have an employee that is only beholden to one elected official, too.
And that's the way the law is stated, that's the way that they're structured. We don't have a choice in making it any other way. So, I mean,
But
that's,
we have a choice if we're going to pay someone as to what parameters we put around how they're paid and what is put in place in order for them to be hired to be paid that amount.
what the board, according to what the statute states, you've probably read it, so you probably are pretty familiar with it, states that the board is responsible for setting the salary and coming with hours. They can set hours agreed upon with the elected official. So that would be something that could be a point of discussion, but as far as any other parameters, that's wholly within the decision of the elected official who that person serves. So I don't know of any,
I mean,
don't know of any
I
other
guess my
authority.
issue is we
Just for a
can,
minute, is there,
Yeah.
we've gone back
Sorry.
and forth. Is there any rounds, anybody else want to weigh in before, Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, I was cool with Trustee Hornberger's back and forth. No, I like that. I like that because you had a lot of questions, and the concerns that you raise are, shared. I have some too. And the difficulty is this: for as long as I've been here, maybe forever, the township deputies, there's a statutory, as the clerk has put in her resolution, the statutory sort of supervision rests with the elected official, right? So what we've always done is you take probably in each of your departments, you have a senior person who's been with the township for a long time, assumes the role of deputy, and they receive a stipend in addition to their salary. The difficulty there is which part answers to the township supervisor, which is every township employee according to the Township Charter Act. Supervisor has day-to-day operational control, all the staff with the exception of the 2 deputies. But it's really only $3,000 worth of that deputy. So the deputies, as I understand it, according to the Charter Act, answer directly to you, to the elected officials. They can hire their spouses, bowling partner, anybody that they want to, but the board sets the salary. And so the offset of that has been basically the stipend, and then all of the other work rules are requirement of, in almost all instances, they've been union employees. If we're going to move, and I think directionally we had some conversations before the election, it was something that I felt very strongly about should take place after the election, because in essence what we're talking about is giving the voters are sending a treasurer and a clerk with the ability to hire, which now would be an FTE that's directly answers to them. But in terms of the funding, I don't know. I don't know how we balance that, because I don't like a full-time salary, full-time benefits, and also being. It seems like the board should have some control over the employee. A stipend of $3,000. I guess you can't really. Totally under the elected's control. But you put a full-time salary, you're talking in the neighborhood of 80% with benefits attaching to the union. You now have over 6 figures in each department, answering only to the elected official. I got to believe there's some balance, and the conversation, Trustee Vosberg, we've been familiar with this for months now, and I think for the most part, we're comfortable with the area of the salary and the terms and so forth, but I was looking for something a little stronger than just the resolution. And I was hopeful, and again, I know we've had, Clerk Barry and I have had communication, but when Trustee Vosberg and I spoke about this earlier this week, she said that she was going to, conference with you, and that she and I shared some of the same concerns, which were, in essence, a lot of the things that Trustee Hornberger is mentioning. There has to be some contractual review of this, because we are converting what was previously a stipend to a full-time serious salary, and there should be some accountability. I'm not entirely comfortable just deflecting to the charter, which gives, ultimately they will answer to the electeds. But there's got to be some mechanism to withdraw the funding if we have somebody who is completely rogue, that doesn't show up, that doesn't, there should be some parameters attached to this that would accompany the resolution and have some degree of accountability to the board. And I think that is something that I would be comfortable with having either Mr. Herpich, if he's available to us, as a consultant to review, to work with the elected officials, the full-time elected officials, to get something that they're comfortable with, but something more than just this resolution. And when we spoke briefly before the meeting, I shared that with you, and you said that you had forwarded that, but I don't see anything in the board packet in terms of what that looks like, other than just saying, consistent with the MCL 4169 and MCL 4177. I would like to see something along the lines of where Ms. Hornberger is with regard to board oversight, some oversight, and also making sure that we're not in conflict with any of the existing union contracts, because as you talk about, the deputy acts in your stead. Do you have now your appointee, who has gone through no HR of any kind, now directing township employees and union staff, and what kind of situation does that create? And making sure that we're covered there, I think would be wise.
So I just like to ask, I've looked at multiple communities, many resolutions and board language or motion language. I have not seen anywhere in the state of Michigan where another community has any type of board oversight other than what's allowed in the statute. So I would look to ask, perhaps township attorney can shed some light on what any kind of board oversight would even look like, because that seems in conflict with the statute to me.
Well, your oversight is in the ability to set the salary, which gives the board the ability to weigh in on some of the duties of the deputy. There's no question that under Michigan law, deputy clerks and deputy treasurers serve at the pleasure of the deputy and the clerk. There's no doubt about that. But I slightly disagree with the scope of those two individuals' duties. For instance, with respect to the clerk, the statute is not clear. I mean, it doesn't lay out any duties at all. It says that, for instance, the deputy clerk possesses the powers and performs the duty of the clerk when you're absent, when you're sick, when you're dead, and when you're disabled. Short of those four items, on a day-to-day basis, the deputy clerk doesn't have the powers of the clerk at all. And it's very common in communities to take the position of deputy clerk and attach it to another job in the community, which has been done for a long time. There are communities which will take a clerk that's already working for the community. That clerk makes $50,000, and they have detailed job descriptions, and then they'll tack on an extra X thousand dollars to work in their capacity as deputy clerk. And that's common because if you think about it, forget the election for a minute. For the other 3.5 years, the deputy clerk is not doing elections. And so in many communities, what they're saying is, you're not going to pay a deputy clerk 80% of a full-time elected official's salary to do activities that are not the clerk's duties. They're doing clerical work. And that's, I think, where the idea of bringing in your HR director and sitting down and trying to figure out, you know, what portion of the duties are truly deputy clerk and deputy treasurer duties, and what are they doing the rest of the time? And you could clearly lay out a job description and hire them as an employee and also have them be a deputy. And if the clerk or the treasurer decides at some point they're not satisfied with the performance, that person can be let go as the deputy, but you still have the employee working here. But in that case, you've got oversight. But, you know, I agree with Trustee Hornberger, and I agree with Trustee Joseph that there is a mechanism to talk about the scope of the duties. And it's not just as if you hire a deputy with no board oversight, because the board's leverage, which is extreme, is the salary. And it's not uncommon in some communities where they did that, Dave, back in the day. 20 years ago, I remember in a particular unnamed board, not here, where they appointed their spouses as the deputy. And the board said, that's fine. You want to appoint your spouse? That's good. We're going to put their salary at $1. And that's happened. It happened, you know where it happened. And it happened many times over, and it dissuaded the elected officials from doing that. So I don't think this is as complicated as maybe you're suggesting. I think that with some help maybe from your HR director, you could look at somebody who is either an existing employee, or if you want to bring in somebody new that you hire in a capacity in a clerical function, and then make another component of that the deputy clerk. So the board would have oversight, and the salary could be apportioned based on the kind of duties that this person is performing. But they're not going to be performing the duties of the clerk or the treasurer 365 days a year. That's just not reality. And that's not what the statute says.
Just want to weigh in. In my time as supervisor here, this is the third time as an agenda item. This is the fourth time as discussion. And my position is, and always has been, I support, I don't want to interfere with who you want to pick as a deputy. You want to pick whoever. What I do support and what I've tried to do across the board, and one of the reasons why I asked the board to approve Mr. Herpich to stay around here so he could do exactly this. Unfortunately, I've been circumvented. He hasn't been communicated with. The original discussion that this was going to be a part-time position and it was going to be funded fully in the budget, those discussions never took place until this agenda item hit. So everything that the trustees have indicated, I've got the same concerns. I don't care. The board's going to set the compensation. What I would like is a legitimate agreement between that party and this board that is clear and concise and addresses everyone's concerns. Fully recognizing the authority of each party to appoint who they see fit. But again, a clear document with job descriptions, work at performance hours, that's where I've been from day one. With that, I'll defer. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. My name was mentioned earlier. I did have a conversation with Clerk Berry about that, and she did send me a memo later this afternoon, and it does cover a lot of those things, and I would just like to see that, but not everybody got to see that. It wasn't part of this package, so I appreciate it, and those were the kinds of things I'm looking for. I've said all along, I support this. In fact, when I first came on board, I was surprised at the structure of the deputy, because I saw it as problematic the way it was described earlier with the $3,000 stipend. So I support this. I continue to support it. I would like to see something along the line of our own elected official compensation that we passed in 2018, which was an attempt to, there'd been 3 or 4 different decisions made over the years, and whenever you wanted to know what the elected officials' compensation was, you had to pull out 3 or 4 documents and put them together. So in 2018, there was an attempt to, there was a document that put all of the benefits, the salary and the benefits all in one document. And that's the type of thing I would like to see for this. And I think it could happen at the next meeting. It could be prepared in time for the next meeting, that we could get this over with, approve it and get it over with. I also accept the higher pay amount too, because in my opinion, $3,000 isn't a lot of money for the responsibility that somebody could have to have in the absence of the full-time elected official. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott?
This item came before the board in January of 2022. It was a full contract, spelled out all of the duties of the deputy treasurer, and that item was not voted on, and there was a very similar discussion. And this item also came up in May of 2024. It was a full job description, and the item, the motion was withdrawn for similar discussion. Where is this common? The attorney refers to a situation that he says is common, which is we are using union employees and then we're asking them to do 2 jobs for a $3,000 stipend. I don't know where that's common because it's not common in Clinton Township. It's not common in Macomb Township. It's not common really in most of the local townships. I was at MTA training seminar yesterday, and the very first question we were asked was, how many people here, how many treasurers here are part-time? And people raised their hands. And then the second question was, how many treasurers here are full-time? And people raised their hands. And MTA teacher, Cindy Dodge, said, I want to inform you that you're all full-time, all right? Doesn't matter how much you're paid, you are required to be, as an elected official, at the will of the people all the time. So I believe that is what our clerk is referring to. The issue with giving a stipend to a union employee. So the clerical union, that question was asked in January of 2022 because a employee retired. And a clerical union person said, I would do it because I think that I want to make sure that the integrity of the treasurer's office is covered. The clerical union representative said that is not possible. A clerical union employee cannot be a deputy because they cannot have a supervisory role. So at that point, it was shut down. With the ability to sign the checks and for the purpose of separation of power, there are very few management employees that can sign the checks, transfer the wages, the things the treasurer is required to do. The management employees, there are many conflicts of interest with that. So limiting that to few people. The other part is you can't force somebody to do something. So a lot of people don't want to be in a political environment. When they have a good, solid, secure job as a department head or a management level person, do they want to take on the elected officials' responsibilities for a $3,000 stipend? So this is where we've had a retirement, we've had a resignation, and we also had a dismissal of the last 3 deputies that were here as full-time employees. The clerk and myself have done everything we possibly could in order to meet our statutory duties and have brought this before this board because we are asking this board to also do the same. If a job description is something I think that's very easily spelled out, so if you think about the treasurer's office, if somebody doesn't show up, that deputy goes up to the counter and takes your tax bills. If I'm in a meeting as an executive with my colleagues here on the board and the bill run needs to be signed, that deputy signs that. If there are other job duties that are required for me to meet my statutory obligations as your treasurer, then that was what that deputy does. So we can go ahead and go through the whole process of writing down all of the things that each clerk and treasurer does, and that's fine. But what we have to understand as a board is that these folks like us are not protected by FLSA. So that is something that is part of what we're asking people to do as a $3,000 employee. Now, we talk about a $3,000 stipend, and that's authorized by our department. Again, that stipend, it is arguable, I believe would be the right word, whether or not a $3,000 stipend, which was part of an LOU for a union employee who is no longer with the township and has retired, is that meet the statutory obligation of this board? Does that agreement of $3,000 meet the statutory obligation of the board to set the salary? I'm not entirely sure if that does, and hopefully we don't have to continue talking about that, because I don't know that that is relative to anything else that we're doing. The board does have a duty to be able to set the salary, and we have respectfully done everything that we can at this point to meet, to answer those questions. Trustee Hornberger is new, and these questions, this is not something that she's looked into, and that's fair. But the rest of the board, we've had these discussions in length, both privately and publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, so we've had these discussions before. You've brought, in 2022, we brought it in May, and each and every one of those occasions, it was half-baked. Because the issue that I have is the newest set of eyes captured, and I've talked to Trustee Henderson about it, captured our frustration perfectly. And that is this: you have the statutory ability mandated. You have a mandated obligation to have deputies. They report directly to you and only to you. They serve at your pleasure. The checks and balances have always been the financial compensation. So if a deputy wants to hire their spouse, and their spouse only comes to work a few days around elections, then the checks and balances are that that person is only going to be receiving $3,000 stipend. The bulk of their work was done under their labor agreed upon contract, the 95% of their job. In the case of your former deputy who was here for 4 decades, she was paid because of her expertise in what would arguably be a clerical administrative position. She held down that position for decades, and the bulk of her compensation was as a result of all of the skills and experience that she had. She only received $3,000 as your deputy. So what happens if you are no longer satisfied with your deputy? Does she lose her full-time salary? And what we've seen happen in the last couple of years is a person leaves the deputy role, and then what do you do? You can't get somebody in to replace that person for $3,000, because the reality is that most of their job was covered under the township, the salary, and as an employee of the township, they answer to the supervisor. We've had issues where the electeds are feeling that their operation is compromised because they don't have control, they don't have a solid employee that answers only to them. So when it came forward previously, I think there was general consensus that that should be addressed. That should be addressed. You should have somebody that reports to you. But I'm not comfortable with a full-time salary, and the only argument for oversight is, well, it's in the MCL 4169 and MCL 4177. They only answer to the elected. Well, okay, from a job performance standpoint, the board says if you have a deputy that's making a full-time salary and nobody in the building has ever seen them, except for twice, around tax season or election season, I think the board should have the ability to pull that salary. We can't sanction your employee. We can't suspend your employee but
But
we
you do.
certainly should be able,
But you do.
say again?
You do.
Well, let me just finish. I don't think that we do because we don't have the oversight. So if your employee never shows up and they collect a full-time salary, what does the board do once what do we say? Well, under MCL 4169, that rests with the department head, so the board is powerless on a $100,000 salary? I don't think so. So I think there should be a mechanism and a hybrid of sorts that afford you the full-time position, but also afford the board some oversight in the compensation. And that should go through our attorney and I think maybe HR.
Treasurer Elliott, you want to respond to that?
But you do. So let's go with that hypothetical, right? So you have, you say you set the salary and 80% is the recommended. So if you're not comfortable with 80, 70%, 60%, 50%, we've talked about that, right? Whatever you feel like based on what your judgment is. You say, okay, that person, you know, Clerk Barry or Treasurer Elliott, the person that you have appointed, we never see them here. I don't think that we chose 70% of the income. We're not seeing that person produce. We're at the next board meeting, you bring the agenda item and the 4 trustees can vote to say we now reduce that salary to 10% of the elected official. You have that is where you do have that right. But the fact is we can go through the exercise of listing these duties, but the reality is that it's going to be whatever the clerk or the treasurer says. Hey, I need you to do this or I need you to do that. And that may change as we've talked about, but you absolutely have that is the role of the board, and as is clearly stated in the MCL, right, is that your statutory responsibility is to set that salary, and you can set it at this recommended amount or a different recommended amount. But that's what I'm asking, and I've asked several times to set the salary. Now, I think that out of decency towards that person, that yes, we could take one of the previous agreements, send that over to Mr. Herpage, and have him go ahead and carve up, proper document for us. So once we do appoint somebody, have that person sign it, and then if you don't. If you, as the board members, don't see that it's what you were told, then you come back and you bring it at 0. But here's the issue right now today. This board has never voted on any deputy salary, and that's where my concern would be for the board members, is to say that is really what your part of this is. Our part is to do our job, right? Is to do that. The people who elected us said, okay, do your job, and we expect that the clerk and the treasurer are going to do those jobs. And the clerk and the treasurer are saying we need to have an appropriate salary from the board so that I can understand what the board is looking for as far as paying a salary, so that we can tell the folks who we're hiring what to expect. Right now, it's very unclear, like the clerk said, to her deputy especially, and mine has been, I don't even talk to my deputy about all of these agenda items because I need her to do, we're going into tax season. I need those employees to not be super stressed out right now because they have to serve the residents. People are coming in and they have questions about their special assessments and their tax, and we want to train on that. And so we're looking at the board saying, set a parameter and then send it over to Eric Herpage to write a contract.
Clerk Beer.
Mr. Supervisor, so a couple of things. There's a misconception that this has never gone to HR. The very first time that this was brought before the board, it went to our HR director, Steve Duchesne. He wrote it. He wrote what we presented to the board. This has gone to HR twice. It went to HR once then. Then when he left, and I understand he's no longer here, no longer our acting HR director, but he was for 8 years, or 6 years, or whatever it was, then the attorneys were kind of the stand-ins for that. So the attorney wrote the second one. So it went to the HR director, it went to the attorney. I don't know who else we can go to. My fear is if we take it to Eric Herpich, who right now is listed as a part-time consultant to the supervisor, which is fine, but this part-time consultant or employee, when he leaves, by the time it comes back to this board and he's not here, does it have to go to the next guy? Or are we gonna say, well, Eric Herpich wrote this one, but now we've hired a new HR director, now we have to start all over again, and now it's gone through 4 people. So it just seems to me, and I also want to answer a couple of the questions that didn't get answered yet.
Can I
'cause-
interject right there?
Well, I'm just saying, Trustee Hornberger asked where the 80% came from. That's kind of a standard across the industry, and you'll see that when you actually figure out the number on that, it ends up being about 73,000 and some change right now. That falls right within the mean and the average for deputies in our similarly situated sized communities. And I think we pulled 10 or 12 of them from a salary survey. It falls right in there. It's right in line with that. But I also had a question for the attorney, and that is, there was a suggestion that once the salary is assigned, if the board is not satisfied for some reason with the deputy's performance in some way, that they can then stop that. Is there a mechanism to allow them to do that?
The statute is silent on that. Both sections dealing with the deputy clerk and the deputy treasurer contain almost identical language. All it says is that the salary shall be set by the board, period. Doesn't say you couldn't change the salary. Again, the statute is not as clear as I think everybody wants it to be. All it says is you have to have one. It's appointed and serves at the pleasure of the clerk and the treasurer, but they only handle the duties of the clerk and the treasurer when those 2 individuals fall into those 4 categories. Not here, sick, disabled, or deceased. Short of that, on a day-to-day basis, if the full-time official is in his or her office doing their duties, the deputy clerk doesn't do anything any different than any other employee does. It's not as if they have any managerial authority. That's not what the statute says. That individual is to be there in case something happens to the clerk or the treasurer so that they can step in and things can be continuous. It's not intended, and there's not, by the way, there's not a single decision, Court of Appeals or Supreme Court case in Michigan that has interpreted either one of these sections to address any of the things that we're talking about right now. So I've already said what I said before, and I'm positive it's right, but.
Listen, I'm going to restate what the attorney said earlier. This is a very low hurdle. There's nothing difficult about this. If you're concerned that I have an interaction with Mr. Herpich is the problem, I'll remove myself. He's available. I've spoke with him. This is very simple.
I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. I think that's appropriate. My concern was that how many more people does it have to go through? That was my concern.
Nothing. I've spoke with him about this. He's familiar with this. This goes back to the previous dates. There was an understanding that this would have been done through the budget process. That was my frustration, and no one reached out and said, hey, what are we going to do? The treasurer and I had a discussion at one point, but it ended. I don't care. This is a very simple fix. Trustee Joseph, Trustee Hornberger, this all can be worked out, and Mr. Herpich is very well versed in it. I've had lengthy discussions with him. I'll remove myself. Go directly with him. And to Trustee Vosberg's point, this can be back within 10 days. It's not that hard. The question that I think that everybody that I'm getting out of this discussion is, what is the job description? Who do they report to? The statute is very clear. They report to you. Just some work environment questions. Hours of work, healthcare package, family, all of those things cost money, and I think that should be exposed and discussed. With that being said, I'm good with this. It's a very easy fix. So I'll leave it with that. If you want to amend it, if you want me to amend it, turn this over to Mr. Herpich and let him come back as soon as possible. I'm open to it.
Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Joseph.
I've heard Mr. Siebert a couple of times now. This really does not sound terribly complicated, but the checks and balances here, for me, rest with the salary and the compensation for the deputy. So this resolution is not strong enough, in my opinion, to spell out what this employee is walking into if they take and serve at your pleasure for 80% of your salary. And let's be honest, there's no hours of operation that comes with our jobs. There's nothing that says you must be here with a few maybe tax specific days, you know, that you, so if you never show up, the voters will decide that every 4 years. But that doesn't extend to the deputy. And I'm not comfortable with saying the two whereases that really address that are not sufficient. And I think there should be, in the same way that we, I don't know, with our SAD on our public safety, every year we come in and we have a demonstration of why we need the money that we need. On some level, there should be some performance review that you provide to the board, highlighting what your deputy has done and why they're getting the salary that they get, that they're here, you know, within reason. There are times during elections that you work in excess of 40 hours a week. But if your deputy comes in at 80% of your salary and nobody in the building knows them, that's a problem. And to simply say, oh, well, they answer to the deputy and only to the deputy, I'm not comfortable with. I would like to see, and it sounds simple, I don't have a problem with the dollar amount. I think you're okay there, but you're getting into areas that do impact other things. One, the budget. The budget should reflect that you have an 80% expenditure in your department. That should be addressed in the budget. And then 80% of what? Because we have the conversation that Trustee Vosberg and I had, we have about 3 different governing documents that dictate board member compensation. And I think this would be a great time, if you're going to attach your deputies to your salary, what is your salary? What should your salary be? And we could do all of that pretty quickly, but let's do it right. I mean, we've had 3 or 4 bites at the apple. I agree with you, but I don't know that we've ever put all the pieces in place at one time, and it sounds like we're close. But I would like to see some accountability for that salary spelled out exactly as you say. If there is a problem, then rather than just have a big surprise that one board member says, I don't like deputy treasurer's work ethic and I want to reduce the salary. That should be something that should be spelled out as they take the job, that the board could do that, and that the board, if not satisfied with work performance, could call into question the compensation and salary. So what that document looks like, I think should, Cindy, I think the supervisor's in earnest there. We can utilize Mr. Herpich, we can utilize Mr. Siebert, but bring that document to the board that spells out work expectations rather than just 2 whereases that reference MCL 41 and 69 and 4177. And I'll shut up.
Thank you. Clerk.
So we still won't have a salary for the deputies. I mean, can you guys put in something temporary? Because right now we have nothing. I have a $3,000 stipend for someone who won't do the job. So I guess I really am, honestly, from a practical matter, asking this board, how am I supposed to appoint a deputy tomorrow morning? What do I do? I don't know. They're doing it for free.
You can show them the
Like
video. You can
like
show
literally
them-
for free. I mean, I don't understand how.
Can we show them the YouTube video for tonight's meeting? We're close. And how much work is going to be done between, you got 2 days the office is closed, Thursday and Friday. We're back. I mean, how much will fall apart in the next 10 days for us to?
I think it's a matter of just meeting the statutory duty. I think that's where we're
Right.
at. She's trying to do her statutory duty,
I
and
must
she's
appoint
asking
a
you to
deputy.
do the same.
How do I do
So, and I've said at the last board meeting, to set it at $35 an hour.
Trustee Warrenberg.
So you're asking us to create positions or to give you 80% of your salary. I don't see why it's an issue for you to provide a job description, provide what qualifications these people are going to have for hiring, and provide an evaluation process.
It's not a problem, and we've done it on multiple, and I understand that you're new and, you know, you don't have all of that, and I understand that, and we'll get all of that
Well,
to
if you
you.
have all
I'm
of it,
not
then
new. I
just
have
show
the same
provided
But I
it.
mean, but my question is, that's not the point. My question is, I have a statutory responsibility to appoint a deputy tomorrow morning. So, because right now I don't have a way to compensate a deputy, so it would have to be for $0 at this point.
I gotta check that. We do have a mechanism in place to pay them. There is an hourly rate that they get. And it's been in place prior to me even being supervisor. So there is a mechanism, there's an hourly rate, you can appoint someone, you have someone now that is working and performing that job unless she declined. If you want to raise that rate, I think that's what I heard. If that's an option for the short term until this is done, again, that can be discussed. But there are mechanisms in place to make sure that these individuals are compensated and compensated fairly.
What is the mechanism?
Pardon me?
What is that mechanism?
It's the part-time employees that we have here.
So
It's that rate of pay,
what is that rate of pay?
$23, I believe.
Okay, so let's just make a motion to set the pay at $23 an hour? Can we do that? Should we?
You want,
Because right now, the only person that has control over that rate of pay is the supervisor's office. The board has not set that rate of pay. So the supervisor's office, and that's where that is just being set through, the mechanism is, that's what we pay part-time employees. Who set the part-time employee pay?
the part-time employees pay, even the part-timers were represented by labor groups, so that's where it came from. The temporary individuals, which both currently fall under, don't hold my word, I think it's $22 or $26 an hour, I don't have that information. But whatever you want, if that's what you're asking the board to set that hourly rate until this agreement is represented,
Yes.
That's an avenue we can go down. Trustee?
Thank you. I was not aware that, are you going to be without a deputy?
Depending on how this turned out tonight, yes. Yes, the reason I'm without a deputy, Kathy, excuse me, Trustee Vosberg, is because her classification was a temporary election worker. We are no longer in an election, so I don't have that. But she is the deputy as well.
But if I could just finish my,
Yeah.
we have the, I know it's not a lot, but we have the $3,000 stipend.
Well, hold on, if I'm gonna interrupt. There is a part-time pay rate. Your permanent part-time deputy has been functioning under. The same thing that the treasurer's part-time. They have been extended. So that whole discussion of she has to leave has not happened. And it was brought up earlier. We manage that internally. That was fixed. So the presumption, wherever that came from, that she's ending because the election is over is completely wrong. This is the first I'm hearing of for your deputy clerk. Again, the world's not ending tomorrow. This is manageable. If the point of this discussion is to get an HR director or an HR consultant to create the document, that is very low hurdle for us, and we can do it. As you said, we've gone down this road before. The question is, till we get that back to the board, can we raise the rate? So the treasurer's point, make the motion. We can. Treasurer Elliott.
I'll make a motion to,
It's my fault.
I know this is going on too much. We've done it before. Look, I know statutorily you are entitled, or by law, to have your deputies. I'm looking at this document we saw tonight, similar to what I've seen before. You're asking for 2 full-time individuals, what, around 74,000 at least, based on what your pay is, plus their benefits, legacy expenditures. That's going to rack up a lot of money. And council just explained there's only 4 issues or 4 times in which that deputy will assume any type of authority. And how are you going to tie that into a 20 or 2,000 hour work month? You know, you're going to need this person standing around for that. If you have to, let's look at giving your existing, who you're filling in now, let's give them a raise, you know, if we have to increase the money there. But to create more positions tonight, and we have no HR looking over this, I don't care who's looking, there should be. You want to get on a public safety, you go through a process. You want to get hired by the township, you got to go through a process. Even if you hire somebody, it's just strictly, you know, if you want to hire a spouse, the mailman, the kid down the street, I don't know. I know there's a fact about loyalty. I just think this is wasting, it's burning up a lot of time here for these positions that are there's a lot of money here for the amount of time that we'd actually invest in doing what's defined as their position. So I'd like to call a question.
Support.
Motion call to question. Motion by trustee Anderson, supported by trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no. Call the question.
Well, I didn't get the number. It passed.
Yeah. 4-3.
Clerk Berry, call vote.
Thank you. Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Hornberger.
This is the motion.
Yeah, clarification,
Motion on the
please.
question.
Motion on item 10A.
Right.
Yeah, it was supported by Treasurer Elliott, if I understood
Yep.
it correctly.
Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott,
Sorry, I thought it was.
to approve item 10A.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Hornberger. No. Trustee Vosberg. No. Supervisor Kersten.
No.
Let's go.
Item 10B.
Approve a recommendation by Supervisor Kersten to appoint Daniel Hickey as a member of the Board of Review with a term ending December 31st, 2026.
Is there a motion to approve?
Sure. Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Was that you? Trustee Vosberg? Discussion? Discussion? Seeing none. I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 10B. Clerk Berry?
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 10C.
Item 10C is to approve a recommendation by Supervisor Kersten to reappoint Mark Renault to the Board of Review with a term ending December 31st, 2026.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support?
Second.
Trustee Joseph, any discussion? Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 10D.
Approval to forward proposed amendment to the carried consent judgment to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support?
Second.
Clerk Berry? John?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The property owner has asked that the township consider amending the consent judgment that was passed about 20 years ago. It was originally for 75 by 130 foot lots. They want to do some smaller lots in there, but still single-family. So I'm recommending that you send it to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation, and then it'll come back to the board with similar to what we've done in the past. So it would be a full report from the commission.
Questions from the board or discussion? Trustee Joseph.
Mr. Palin, I know it's going to come back to the board with more details, but what the proposed changes to the setbacks consistent with the consent agenda, how many more units would that add to the development?
So all this would be subject to change, but as they're currently proposing it, the original consent judgment had 156 total lots. The proposed amendment now currently would be 179 total.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 10D. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten?
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson?
No.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger? Aye. Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Item 10E.
Approve a recommendation by the Human Resources Department to adopt resolution number 2024-32, application for additional service credit purchase.
So moved.
Trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Mr. Kirk?
Good evening. This purchase, or this resolution, is for the service credit purchase by one of our employees for a year and 6 months at the cost of $37,000 and $37,187. This purchase will be used to increase their pension benefit or to help meet an early retirement eligibility provision. This is allowable by their bargaining agreement. This is really just a procedural resolution to get it over to MERS, our retirement pension plan, to process it, so.
Thank you, sir. We've done this for other, within that labor group. Any discussion from the board? I have a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 10E. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger? Trustee Vosberg? Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 10F.
Item 10F is to approve a recommendation to award a contract in the amount of $14,900 to Commonwealth Heritage Group for the Jefferson Pathway Phase 1 Archaeological Survey.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support? Is there any support?
I'll support it for purpose of discussion here.
Trustee Vosberg?
I thought that this isn't the one that was going to be dropped.
This is a different one. This is the one you were talking about, I thought was on Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
With Army Corps.
All right.
Okay, so before you is a resolution for an archaeological survey as a part of the Jefferson Pathway project. So just a history on that, we were granted a $525,000 grant through the SEMCOG TAP grant program. As a part of that, we have to go through the MDOT LAP process, which requires us to adhere to the National Environmental Policy Act. Within that Policy Act, there's some State Historic Preservation Office rules that we have to go through. Through that submittal and through that permit application, MDOT came back and asked us to do an archaeological survey. So what that means is we have to send folks out into the field and physically dig potholes and verify whether or not there were existing settlements along the pathway or anything that could suggest there's cultural significance along the pathway. And those are, again, requirements in order for us to obligate those federal funds to move forward. We did obtain 2 different quotes as well for that, and those are both in that packet.
Questions? Trustee Vosberg?
Is there reason to believe there could be something in there?
That is what the MDOT historic folks believe, is that there's reason to believe at least reasonably enough for them to do an additional phase. Now, how often do they find things as a part of these phases? very rarely, but that is something that's within their obligation to look at and to issue.
Thank you.
Further questions? Trustee Joseph?
When this grant was originally brought to the board, there were a lot of questions about matching funds, cost of application, if you will. What would be tied up in terms of the township's investment in the application process? Was the archaeological survey part of the originally known expense tied into the application process?
No, again, that is something that the MDOT office can either require or not require, and it's dependent on the site, and it's dependent on what they find as a part of their archaeological review. So MDOT controls the archaeological review, at least the desktop version of that, and this is something that they've decided to require as a part of this project.
Are there any more, to your knowledge, possible requirements associated with this application process?
This is the last item that we're dealing with. I think we met with Army Corps, as Supervisor was alluding to, this past week, and believe we've walked through all of those requirements as well. So I believe this is the last item.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further comments? A motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve 10F. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no.
Thank you. Item 10G.
Item 10G is to approve a request by the Department of Public Services to purchase a 2025 Alto TRX 766i track mower for a total cost of $24,580.13.
Is there a motion to approve? Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support?
Support.
Trustee Vosberg. Mr. Koshier.
This is a request to purchase a track mower, similar to the one that was purchased a few years ago by Facilities and Operations. That piece of equipment has proven to be quite useful to our department, especially cutting these wet retention ponds, detention ponds that we are maintaining now. The current piece of equipment ends up getting a lot of use and more wear and tear on that equipment than is necessary, so we figure with another piece of equipment, this will give the Water and Sewer Department a piece of equipment similar to F&O to be able to cut these ponds and keep up on that phragmites.
Thank you, sir. Questions from Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we purchased, or the township purchased that mower a couple years ago, and part of the selling point was it could navigate Pollard Park so well. And a meeting or two later, you contracted out an outside firm to cut the grass there. I just wonder, the kill lawnmower here, where is that going to physically be used? Where is it going to be used? It sounds like the other one got beat up a little bit. Just wondering for.
This one will be used for all the retention, detention ponds that the Township Water and Sewer Department maintains part of SADs.
Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, Trustee Anderson, his recollection of the last purchase of this mower, we were pitched on the selling point was that it would, I don't know the terminology, but the weight Yeah. It had the tank tracks. The upside of that was the pounds per square inch or whatever, was displaced in a way that you could cut wet surfaces without leaving the giant ruts that the others, and that was important because of the ball fields. And then literally two meetings after, we contracted out the cutting of the ball fields. So is it your presentation tonight that this mower has been used, the one we purchased, for the detention and retention pond maintenance, which we have had discussions about sort of more aggressively maintaining those, and this is a needed piece of equipment. Your presentation tonight is that you're intending your department will do that maintenance, and we won't be contracting the maintenance that can be done by this mower to anybody else?
At this current time, we have no intentions of contracting out the cutting of the ponds.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Vosper?
Thank you. Does the cost of this and other equipment, for that matter, get rolled into the SAD? The cost for the SAD?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 10G. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Clerk
Aye.
Berry.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. You were
Nope.
Kersten?
I'm sorry.
Kersten, Vosberg, Anderson, Joseph, and Hornberger are ayes. Elliott is no. Berry, no.
I'm sorry. Item 10H.
Item 10H to approve a request by the Department of Public Services to purchase a 72-inch brush cutter attachment for our Bobcat skid steer and tool cat in the total amount of $10,127.
Is there a motion to approve? Again, Supervisor Kersten will make the motion. Is there any support? Trustee Vosberg again. Mr. Cozier?
This is another piece of equipment that we will be looking to purchase in order to help maintain their retention detention ponds. This is a brush cutter here that where we have a lot of the ponds that have need to be gotten in there and aggressively cut. This will give us an opportunity to be able to go in there and actually remove tree branches, trees that are up to 10 inches in a diameter. This is outside of what the track mower, the previous purchase we were looking at, is able to cut. This is going to be for more of the aggressive, heavy cutting. This can also be used at other township properties that we have overgrown areas that we want to take care of. The other advantage to this is that it also will attach to our Bobcat. It will attach to our Bobcat skid steer, the tool cat that was purchased, and also any additional hydraulic skid steer vehicles we buy. We will be able to attach this attachment with.
Discussion from the board. Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, just these two pieces of equipment, they have similar, the question that Trustee Vosberg asked about the cost of the equipment being passed on to the SAD, and I guess there's several mechanisms for that, and when you answered her question, we're not going to make the direct, what I think we have the ability to do, and I'm guessing what you were, is that when you go out and use this equipment and you create a bill for the SAD, you'll reflect the equipment that was used and maybe an appropriate per diem for the equipment, something along those lines, because as you indicated, the purchase of this equipment, the primary duty will be the detention and retention ponds, but it's a versatile piece of equipment that you can use elsewhere, so we probably couldn't apply the direct purchase to the SAD and then use it elsewhere if it's dedicated, but maybe in the application, you know, the specific billing for the cutting, I'm hoping the BSNA can capture that in terms of the equipment used for whatever the maintenance work is done, and maybe we'll see that in the SAD presentation.
Yes, when our staff goes out to cut any of the ponds, we track their hours, what piece of equipment they're using out there, and then they're using the MDOT rate schedule is how we apply the rates that piece of equipment will then be charged for the job while they're out there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further questions? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 10H. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Clerk Berry. Aye.
Item 11, addendums, there are none. Item 12, public comments, 3 minutes. There's a 3-minute time limit. If you would please state your name for the record, not required, but it helps us keep track. The mic is open.
Good evening, Mike Wharton, 503 Bauer. I just want to say, I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving this week. One thing I want to note about tonight's meeting, Trustee Hornberger, your mic, I don't think was on most of the time, so I guess people watching it did not hear almost anything you said tonight, so just a heads up on that. Other than that, now that we have a new board, please take note of everything. It was kind of felt like it was a feedback loop going on the 10A tonight, because it was like 45 minutes back and forth, and I don't really think it went anywhere because it kind of, like from the audience perspective, felt a little bit like you guys were kind of not talking with each other, but kind of going against each other to no real resolution on that one. But aside from that, I would like to say happily that this past weekend, I have published my first book, and I am so happy to share it with everybody. It's called New York Nobility, and it is available on Amazon. It is the first in my trilogy regarding a fictional marriage between John F. Kennedy Jr. and Princess Diana in a timeline where they did not die. And a brief overview is, after a secret meeting in 1995, a connection is made between John F. Kennedy Jr. and Princess Diana. Their lives become intertwined as a love story that follows the pair becoming the ultimate power couple and living beyond the 1990s and into the 2000s. But is everyone ready to accept their popularity and influence in a world rocked by terrorism, technological advancement, and partisan divide? The start of a thrilling trilogy guaranteed to make readers of all ages feel nostalgic for the not-so-distant past and wonder about a couple that could have been, while striving for the hope and ideals they could have represented. A new tale to rethink our politics, our culture, our history, and two of our favorite individuals we lost too soon. That is the hope I will give to you guys in the first book, but there will be two more to follow, and they will be even longer and full of even more politics. So for everybody in the board and audience, I hope you would enjoy reading such a tale. Thank you.
John Speaker, Chesterfield Township. I want to congratulate this board tonight on the way the discussion went with the deputy clerk and the deputy treasurer. That's how democracy is supposed to work. That's how the back and forth works, and that's how it's supposed to be done, bouncing ideas off of each other and going back and forth. I'm going to tell you, I support hiring a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer. What I don't support is a full-time deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer. In my opinion, Treasurer Elliott tonight tried to rewrite history. In 2020, when Treasurer LaFata was in office, we had an investment coordinator, Ellen Clerk, that was also the deputy treasurer. She was paid a stipend to get the job done, and she did it, and not only did she do it, she did it well. In my opinion, Ellen Clark was pushed out by Treasurer Elliott. Besides that, the point tonight, and I think it came across to the majority of the board, was you only need a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer if the treasurer plans on not being here, if she's sick, if she's disabled, or she's deceased. So to sound a 4-alarm fire tonight, where it's an emergency that we have to have, a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer by tomorrow, that's hogwash. So again, Supervisor Kersten and I don't agree on a lot, but you know what? On this tonight, I agreed with him. He was absolutely correct. We've got a mechanism in place right now till we resolve the issue to pay somebody. But again, the key point in here is, and I want the board to keep this in mind, is unless, Treasurer Elliott plans to be sick, unless she plans to be disabled, deceased, or not here, that's what the job says. If you listen to the attorney, that's what the job entails. Other than that, the treasurer and the clerk is in charge. So it's unfortunate that in the statute that for the treasurer's position, you're only required to be here so many days. I think it's either 4 or 5 that you're required by statute. I'm not 100% on that, but she's not required to be here every day. She is required to be here every day if there's no deputy clerk or deputy treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. I'm not here to discuss what happened tonight. What I'm here to talk about is the next meeting when you're going to review the budget and either pass on a budget or find problems with it. I have problems in one area, particularly on the sewer and water department budget. Talked to Supervisor Kersten in the hallway a couple times after the last meetings. I'm concerned because money is in there, shows in the expense, about $2.3 million, $2.5 million for depreciation. That's also included, I think, in the water bill. That's how it's recouped. It's used to buy things. Now, for the last 4 years, that money should have accumulated because nothing has been done to rebuild or replace the old water lines or any of the equipment that's out there. That's evident. It was what happened after the last flood. It wasn't only the storm sewers that failed us, it was the sanitary sewers that failed us. Now, trying to find out what's in the budget, as far as what's in the charges for the sewer and for the water, you don't know. What I've been after and what Paul LaFata, the former treasurer, has been after is the HRW engineering study that supposedly spelled out the duties and the cost of the water department and how they're blended into the charges. And last time I talked with Supervisor Kersten, he said that our study was available online. I couldn't find it. Paul LaFata couldn't find it. Paul called the water department, talked to Mitch O'Connell. Mitch never called him back. I don't know how you can go in and approve a budget, particularly for the sewer and water, which I think is around $18 million, maybe more, without knowing what charges are in there and how those charges are recouped. There's a lot of things that need to be prepared in the system as it is. And additionally, he took on a new sewer line that he's now charging, somewhere should be charged back to the regular customers instead of developers that will make use out of this. It doesn't show up any place in there where it's billed to. It doesn't show up the other sewer line that we took off of Combe County that needs about another $6 million to improve or rebuild. That sewer and water part of the budget is wide open, and I'd like to see a discussion like you had about hiring 2 people part-time. You're looking at collecting $18 million out of your customers here and not knowing what you're going to charge them for and what's in that budget. Thank you.
James Locke, Sutton, New Baltimore, or Chesterfield Township. I'd like to welcome our new trustee to the board. I know this board's been about openness, and since your first session this year, you have a closed session. Just a little reminder, our closed session. Public body may meet in a closed session only for one or more of the permitted purposes specified in Section 8 of the OMA. All right? Discussion must be made, or decisions must be made during an open meeting, not at the closed session. All right? So you can talk all you want about it, but don't make a decision. All right? Thank you.
Any further comments? Any further comments? Bring it back to the board. Trustee Anderson, start with you tonight.
I'd like to thank the Anchor Bay Rotary Club's donation for the Connie Bowl Park. Thank you very much. Trustee Hornberg, I'd say welcome to the board, but proverbial duck takes to water. Thank you. It's going to be an interesting 4 years, I think. The elephant in the room, 10A. Quite a bit of time spent on it. I would ask my fellow board members that are involved to please, not in anger, but take a step back, kind of look at the debate that went on here, look at all the aspects of it, come back December the 10th with another recommendation. I believe this board as a whole wants to resolve this. Please come back with something that we can take care of. And finally, I guess I'd say everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. Be careful. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you. I agree, Trustee Anderson. I think the time that we spent on 10A was valuable time. I appreciate the, well, Mr. Wharton, you know, I know it may not have seemed that we moved the needle, but we did. Congratulations on your book, and thanks for coming to the Township Board meetings. I appreciate your comments, and the debate started off with Trustee Hornberger laying out a number of very key and critical components to this, and during the debate, I think a couple of times, your questions were met with, well, you're new. And so I'll explain it to you, but I'm not new, and your questions were appropriate for your first time here or for Trustee Anderson and I, who have taken up this issue half a dozen times. Your questions were spot on, and when you're talking about 80% of the full-time elected official's salary plus benefits, you're maybe between the two offices somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000, and over the course of our 4-year term, that's approaching $1 million. That is a significant amount of money, and I think that the board, who charged with being the eyes and ears of the public, have an obligation to make sure that we're instituting a good practice. And so the accountability piece and the contract that needs to be reviewed, I think, is a must, and I appreciate your contribution. Mr. Locke, the comments about closed session, I want you to know Attorney Siebert makes certain that only issues that are appropriately contained within the Open Meetings Act are things that are discussed in closed session, and I've been in closed session where the deliberation and debate maybe pivot slightly, and we start talking about maybe a parallel issue, and Mr. Siebert will quickly point out that the scope of our closed session is only pertaining to an appropriate item that is covered under the Open Meetings Act, and that any time there's action taken from a closed session discussion, it's always done in open session. So if we come back tonight and there's no board action needed, it'll simply be that, and if there is action to be taken, it'll be consistent with our attorney's advice. So closed session does not mean that it is done in secret. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and Trustee Hornberger, welcome.
I'll turn it over to you, Trustee Hornberger. It's all yours. Comments or?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say. Thank you for welcoming me, and I look forward to serving the community. Thank you. Happy
Trustee Val-
Thanksgiving.
Trustee Vosberg?
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Treasurer Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I want to let the Anchorage Rotary know that I absolutely appreciate the work that they have done to help us build the various structures within the township, and I'm excited about the work that they're going to be, that we will, as a township, be doing at the Connie Bowles Park. That'll be the first time we actually have a park on that side of I-94, and those residents over there, that's very important. And I appreciate the work the Anchorage Rotary did to raise money to help with that effort. Mr. Wharton, congratulations. I know that you let me read some of your book, and very well written, very intriguing, and I hope it's a great success. We did have some lively discussion, and I do look forward to putting this situation to rest at the next board meeting. Thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Clerk Berry?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and remind everyone what it is that we are all thankful for. God, family, and country in that order. And work is important, but family is more important and God is most important. And I'd like to let everyone know that I know that I and my family this Thanksgiving will be thanking God for all of our blessings, and I encourage everyone to spend time with their family and friends, realize what's important, and I wish that everyone will remember, they say the reason for the season, but the reason for Thanksgiving, the original Thanksgiving, many of us were taught it was that the Pilgrims were thanking the Indians for all of the things that they gave them, and when you find out what they really were being thankful for, they were thanking God for all of the blessings for bringing them to the New World. And the reason why we are all able to sit up here today is because those individuals had faith and had the courage to make that journey, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
You have my, what I'm going to do is with 10A, I'm going to reach out to Mr. Herpich, as I've already done. He's been in the loop on this. We'll return with some sort of package that fits, along with maybe a job description that the board can either address or the other elected full-time officials can take a look at and agree with or not. I'll make that available. Reach out to him tomorrow. Trustee Hornberger, welcome. It'll be, I think, nice working with you. I think your connections at the state will help us. I will lean on those. And then also, final say, the budget is available in draft form still. It's coming back at the next meeting. What I'm going to do is work with the Finance Department and add the deputy position to it full-time, and then be prepared for whatever results the board wants to go as far as that. Again, making sure that it's at least accounted for in the proposed budget, so you can see it. With that being said, we do have a closed session tonight. Is there a motion? Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to enter into closed session. Is there any support?
Second.
Clerk Berry, call the roll. I'm sorry, Clerk Berry, please.
To consider the purchase of lease of real property pursuant to Section 8(1)D of the Open Meetings Act.
Supervisor Kersten made a motion. Clerk Berry supported. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson. Aye. Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Trustee Vosberg. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
9:04.
We're open at 9:04.
If we can go to the north annex, it shouldn't be that long. Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to return to open session.
Second.
Second by Clerk Berry. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Trustee Vosberg. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
At 9:27. Two action items coming out of closed session. Item number one, authorize the supervisor to extend a 90-day, allow the attorney to extend 90-day with existing purchase agreement with Carmana Incorporated. Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support?
Support.
Trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Next item would be authorize the township supervisor to continue negotiations with property discussed in closed session. Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support? Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Hornberger. Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Clerk Berry, no.
Item 15 is adjournment. Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 9:28.